Hi students, once again I am meeting you to discuss about the lesson Biodiversity and its conservation. Today we have to talk about something related to the hotspots, the process of extinction, IUCN and its role, and also the role of Red Data Book. Now what are hotspots? Now hotspots are areas which are characterized by high concentration of endemic species. High concentration of endemic species. And these species are experiencing unusual rate of habitat modification loss because of human activities. That's about the hotspots. Now, endemic species, those species which are restricted only what we have a particular location or a particular country or particular area. They are called as endemic species. Now, an apt definition was given by a person by name Norman Myers. He defined hotspots, the regions that harbor great diversity of endemic species, but at the same time, normally have been significantly impacted and altered by human activities. So there is an impact on these areas, and because of what's called human activities, and so that these areas are being altered. The conditions prevalent in these areas are altered by human activities. Now, normally a hotspot is a region that supports at least 1,500 endemic vascular plant species, supporting at least 1,500 endemic vascular plant species. That's equal to 0.5% of the global total, and this has lost more than 70% of the original vegetation. Now we lost nearly 70% of the original vegetation. Now, if we are considering the number of hotspots in the world, there are about 35 hotspots in the world. But about India, India is home to only 4 hotspots. Only 4 hotspots. It is home to 4 hotspots. We have, for example, Himalayas, Western Ghats, Indo-Malaya, Indo-Chinese. These are the 4 hotspots. What are the characteristics of these 4 hotspots? What are the regions included under these hotspots? I mentioned there are 4 hotspots in India. The 4 hotspots of India are 1. Himalayas, the entire Himalayas region. For example, the eastern Himalayas is endemic to many species. A cradle for new speciation. It is a cradle for new speciation, that is eastern Himalayas. But the entire Himalayas considered as a hotspots. Western Ghats. It's known for amphibian biodiversity, rich in amphibian biodiversity. Now the Indo-Burma includes entire northeastern India except Assam and Andaman group of islands. And also it includes Myanmar, Thailand, Vietnam, Laos, Cambodia and southern China. Now the last one, Sunderlands. The Sunderlands include Nicobar group of islands and also Indonesia, Malaysia, Singapore, Brunei and Philippines. So these are the 4 hotspots in India, totally 35 hotspots in the world. Now a few words about the endangered organisms. What are endangered organisms? A species that has been categorized as very likely to become extinct in course of time is an endangered species. A species that has been normally categorized as very likely to become extinct, going to become extinct soon, and that is called endangered species or endangered organisms, very likely to become extinct is an endangered species. Now this endangered species is the second one, actually second most severe conservation status. The second most severe conservation status. The meaning for that one, we have to conserve these organisms. The first one in the conservation status is critically endangered species. So the critically endangered species are the first in the conservation status, the severe conservation status. The second one is what we call the endangered species. This is the status given by what is called, that is IUCN. So endangered as categorized by what is called IUCN, International Union for Conservation of Nature and Natural Resources. So they just made a red list. As per the red list, now this endangered species is the second most severe conservation status. We have to conserve, we have to give importance for these endangered species. At the most, the second one, and the first one is critically endangered species. So the endangered species is the second most severe conservation status. That means we have to give importance for the conservation of such species. For wild population in the IUCN scheme, that is what we call the red list. After critically endangered species. So critically endangered species is the first conservation status. First severe conservation status. We have to give importance for the conservation of such species because very few enough. The second most severe conservation status are endangered species. Now there was a calculation, statistical data made in two different years. Now in 1998, in the red data book or red list, there were about 1,102 animal and 1,197 plant species in the IUCN red list. So there's a book, red data book, otherwise called the red list. In that IUCN, maintained by IUCN, now has been changed the name. So in 1998, according to this data, there were about 1,102 animals and 1,197 plant species in the red data book in 1998. But when statistics was made in 2012, the list contains, see that one, 3,077 animal species and then 2,655 plant species as endangered organisms worldwide. The number has gone up. The meaning for that one, certain animal species are declining in number. There is a reduction in the number of animal species that leads to what we have extinction of such organisms. That is why the red data book contains more number of endangered species. They are likely to become extinct. So we have to conserve such species in nature through certain programs. Okay, so that's about the endangered organisms. The next part of the lesson is extinction. What is extinction? Which species is considered as extinct? So a species is considered as extinct when none of its members are found anywhere in the world. When none of its members are found anywhere in the world, completely absent. Such species are called what is known as extinct species, and the phenomenon is called extinction. Now we have different types of extinction we can see. That is, we have latent natural extinction, mass extinction, anthropogenic extinction. Before that, there is also another type of classification. The extinct species are classified into widely extinct species, globally extinct species, and also locally extinct species. What's the meaning for each one? Now, widely extinct species. If individuals of a species remain alive only in captivity, captivity means just actually in cages under our control, or any other what is called human controlled conditions, is said to be extinct in the wild. The species is said to be extinct in the wild when members of its species remain alive only in captivity or other human controlled conditions. They are under the control of human beings, not in the wild. So they are considered to be wild extinct species. The next one, locally extinct species. A species is considered to be locally extinct when it is no longer found in an area it once inhabited. So no longer found in a particular area, it once inhabited, but is still found elsewhere in other parts of the world. So they're absent only in a particular area locally, but its members are found anywhere else in the world, and such a species called locally extinct species. So a species is considered to be locally extinct when it is no longer found in an area, not found in that particular area. No just actually indication of the presence of that species where it once inhabited, but still found in some other parts of the world. And such extinction is called, such a species called locally extinct species, and the extinction is called locally extinction. Local extinction, local extinction. So locally extinct species. So the wild extinct species, the normal extinct species together called as globally extinct species. So the normal extinct species and the wild extinct species together called actually globally extinct. So in both these situations, that is wild extinct species and normal extinct species, in these two conditions, they are considered as globally extinct, absent all over the globe. That's about a main type of classification. In the 450 million years of origin of life on Earth, just we have, in the 450 million years of life on Earth, there had been just 5 mass extinctions, which eliminated nearly 50% of the species of flora and fauna on the world, just about on the globe, also on the world. Now, what are the causes of extinction? The two major causes of extinction are: number one, drastic environmental changes, and number two, population characteristics or attributes. Natality, mortality, immigration, emigration, these are all what we got the population characteristics. Otherwise, we can say population dynamics. These are the two main causes of extinction. Altogether, there are three different types of extinction. Number one, natural extinction. Number two, mass extinction. The third one, anthropogenic extinction. What is a natural extinction? It is a slow process of replacement of the existing species with better adapted species. How is it happening? So, it is due to number one, changes in the environment. Number two, evolutionary changes. Number three, predation. And number four, what we call diseases. Normally, a smaller population can get extinct sooner than the large population due to a process was called inbreeding depression. In natural extinction, a small population can get extinct sooner than the large population because of one reason, what is called inbreeding depression. What is inbreeding? So the mating of closely related individuals within a breed for 4 to 6 generations. Mating of closely related individuals within a breed. So continuous inbreeding results in reduction in fertility. It reduces fertility as well as productivity. That is called inbreeding depression. Continuous, what is called a continued inbreeding, results in reduced fertility and productivity. That phenomenon is called inbreeding depression. As a result, we have less adaptivity of individuals and variations. So that's about what we have natural extinction. Now the second one, mass extinction. Now the Earth has experienced quite a few mass extinctions due to, I mentioned already, 5 mass extinctions due to what we have environmental changes. Now a mass extinction occurred nearly 225 million years ago during a period, what is called the Permian period. So we know in the geological time scale, Permian period is one of the periods of Paleozoic era that is normally noticed a mass extinction where 90% of shallow marine water invertebrates disappeared. So that was a major extinction, mass extinction that occurred on this globe. That is during the Permian period, one of the 7 periods of Paleozoic era in the geological time scale. It experienced mass extinction of nearly 90% of what we have marine water invertebrates, particularly shallow water marine invertebrates. Now the next one, anthropogenic extinction. This is because of what we call the human activities. Anthropogenic, the word referring to human activities. The human activities caused extinction. So these are abetted. A word is given in the book. These are abetted. That is normally we can see assisted, encouraged by human activities. This is assisted by human activities like, for example, the hunting process, habitat destruction, over exploitation of resources, industrialization, urbanization. These are some of the reasons for anthropogenic extinction. We have two examples in the book. One is the dodo bird, the passenger pigeon. Another one is Sterlus sea cow of Russia. One is from Mauritius, what is called the dodo bird. Another one, what we have the Sterlus sea cow of Russia. These are the two examples for anthropogenic extinction. Now the examples of anthropogenic, that is what we call extinction examples. So because of human activities, some of the animals became extinct. One such example is see that when the dodo bird, the passenger pigeon of Mauritius Island, and another one the Sterlus sea cow, a mammal in Russia. These are the two major examples. And also another one, see that when amphibians seem to be at higher risk of extinction, that is in Western Ghats, due to what is called habitat destruction, due to the loss of habitat. These are the best examples. The most serious aspects of loss of biodiversity is the extinction of species. It is a serious aspects of loss of biodiversity. So the extinction of species is one of the major causes of loss of biodiversity. What's happening because of what is called the extinction of species? The unique information contained in the genetic material of this extinct species in the form of DNA and its niche, that is a functional status of an organism, and the niche it possesses are lost forever. The functional status of the organism, the genetic information contained in DNA, both being lost because of the extinction leading to the loss of biodiversity. That's why I say, so the most serious aspects of the loss of biodiversity is what we call the extinction of species. So extinction of species is one of the major causes of what is called loss of biodiversity. Now the next one, what is IUCN? What is its role? So International Union for Conservation of Nature and Natural Resources, and that is called IUCN. So it is an organization working in the field of nature conservation of nature and sustainable use of natural resources, not being actually exploited fully, sustainable, normal use. We have to reap, harvest, actually the products from nature, not fully, only at the optimum level. That is called sustainable use of natural resources. Educating the people how to use the natural resources in a sustainable way. And that is the main purpose of IUCN, an organization. Now, it was established in 1968 and located in Switzerland, one place what's called Glenveedy. It's located at Glenveedy, Switzerland. Now it is involved in the following processes or events: data gathering and analysis research, number one. Then field projects and education on conservation. We have that is sustainable development and biodiversity. So two major functions: data gathering and analysis research, and then field projects and education on conservation, sustainable development, and also biodiversity. So the mission just operated by this IUCN is doing the following activities. So IUCN's mission is to influence, encourage, and assist the societies throughout the world to conserve nature, and also to ensure that any use of what we call natural resources, any use of natural resources is equitable for all. So the natural resources is not belonging to one person, it is for all. That's why it's called is equitable and ecologically sustainable, not disturbing the nature, not disturbing the balance of nature. That's why normally the mission is operating, influence, encourage, and then assist societies throughout the world to conserve what is called the nature. And the second one, to ensure that any use of natural resources that is equitable for all equally, and also sustainable use of resources. Ecologically sustainable use means not disturbing the balance of nature. We have to get the resources in an optimal way, not exploiting the entire what is called the nature. And that's about this one IUCN's mission that is operating throughout the world. The other aspects of IUCN. So it influences the governments and industries through, that is, partnerships by providing that is information and advice. Then the organization collects, compiles and publishes IUCN Red List of threatened species as well as the conservation status in the world, how far they are being conserved, the conservation status in the world. Then it plays a vital role in the implementation of International Convention on Nature Conservation and Biodiversity. These are all the different aspects of IUCN. Now we have to go for what is called Red Data Book. So Red Data Book, a Red List is what is called catalog of taxa, the different species, particularly species, a catalog of different what is called taxa. Catalog means you know that one collection of information and then you see that one arranged in the order of alphabets. That is called catalog. It's a catalog of different taxa. Those species, here taxa referring to the unit what we have the species, and those species which are facing at high risk of extinction, That's a red data book containing actually the information about the taxa species, those going to extinct or those who are at high risk of extinction. Let's see information. Now this red data book, a red list, is normally maintained by International Union for Conservation of Nature and Natural Resources. Now this IUCN has been just renamed as WCU. That is World Conservation Union. IUCN in the past maintained what we call the red data book, where it is being maintained by WCU, what we have actually World Conservation Union. That is a rename of what is called IUCN. Now it maintains what we call the red data book. So we have to go for information about the red data book. The red list or red data book is maintained by IUCN, International Union for Conservation of Nature and Natural Resources, which is now renamed as WCU, World Conservation Union, located in Marges, Switzerland. So that is being maintained. So IUCN former name, the one which maintains what we call red data book, now it is being maintained by WCU, World Conservation Union. The concept of red list was mooted, that is actually raised for discussion in 1963. Now what is the purpose? What are the different purposes of preparation of red list? Number one, to create awareness on the degree of what is called threat to biodiversity. To get awareness in the mind of people. Identification and documentation, writing about what is called a particular species, that is called documentation. Identification and documentation of species at high risk of extinction. Then we can provide global index on declining biodiversity. What is an index in different places about the declining of biodiversity? And we have also two more. Now the other purposes of that is what we have the preparation of red list or red data book is preparing conservation priorities and help in conservation of action. That is the next one. And the last one, information. What is the purpose of preparation of what is called red list book or red list or red data book? Information on international agreements on conservation of biological diversity. We are getting information about the agreements made between the countries to conserve biological diversity. Now, what are the categories of species from the red data book? The red list categories in that book, there are 8 categories of species which are facing extinction. 1. Extinct species. Extinct in wild species, the second one. Endangered species. Then critically endangered species, vulnerable species, lower risk species, data deficiency. There is no proper data available. Then not evaluate. Still under what is called observation. They are not evaluated which species is normally under extinction. So these are the 8 categories that are found in the red data book or red list. With that I concluded about what we have the red data book. Now we have to go for conservation of biodiversity in the next class. Okay, thank you.